Hi my loves, welcome back to my channel. My name is gisleniq if this is your first time here. So today's video is going to be a super exciting video. It's a video I've been wanting to film for quite a while now. So today's video is going to be a get ready with me while I talk to you guys about therapy, about my journey through therapy, about what I've learned in therapy and why I made the decision to go to therapy. So yeah, so if you guys want to chit chat, get to know me a little bit more and get to know about my journey through therapy, then go ahead and keep watching. Okay, so like I said, I'm just going to be doing a get ready with me. I probably won't discuss too much about what products I'm using or anything, but I'll make sure to link everything down below. Okay, so first I'm going to start off with talking about why I made the decision to go into therapy. So I started therapy in March of 2021, I believe. I have always been a very strong advocate for therapy. I think that everyone should go to therapy. I think that everybody will benefit from therapy. I don't see any negative to therapy other than you having to sit in a lot of uncomfortable feelings. But at the end of the day, in order for you to like grow and level up, you need to be able to like put yourself in uncomfortable situations and uncomfortable feelings. Yeah, so I had been wanting to go to therapy for years before I finally found the therapist that I see now. And the reason that it took me so long is because I had a lot of criterias for the type of therapist that I wanted, and I didn't really want to stray from that because I felt like if I didn't have the type of therapist that I have now, that she wouldn't be able to relate to a lot of the things that I've gone through in my life, because you know, it's just kind of hard for someone to relate to what you've gone through if they've never gone through anything similar. And not to say that a therapist who hasn't gone through some of the things that I've gone through wouldn't be effective, but I just felt like if I found a therapist who was somewhat similar to me, it would just make the experience of having to explain things that have happened in my life a lot easier. And to be honest, I do feel like that is the case. And so I'm happy that I waited as long as I did to just find the perfect therapist. And I really do think that the therapist that I have is like the perfect therapist for me. And she just understands, you know, my struggles and some of the things that I've gone through. So that's why it took me so long to find a therapist, because, you know, when you have this criteria, it definitely does delay the process. And so in 2021, there were just a lot of transitions that were happening in my life. Like, I had bought a house with my husband. We were under a lot of renovations. I was planning a wedding. It was the first time that I had like officially moved out of my house. And you know, I was like living with someone else. I wasn't like a roommate in college type of situation. And so it was somewhat isolating because I felt like I was going through all these big changes in my life, and I didn't really have anybody that I could like talk to and could 100% relate to what it was that I was going through. And so I found myself in, and on top of that, I was also in a job that I was miserable at. If you guys watched my I've been unemployed for 6 months video, if you haven't, I would make sure to like link it above. Back to what I was saying, I was in a job that I was like miserable at. I had been there for pretty much almost at that point like 3 years and a half, and I just did not see the light at the end of the tunnel. And so there was just a lot of factors and a lot of things that were going on that I just felt like that was probably the worst that my mental health has ever been at that point, because it was just a lot of things were going on, a lot of transitions, and I just felt like in some aspects of my life, I felt like things weren't panning out how I imagined them to be. And I'll kind of get into that a little bit later with one of the things that I've learned through my time in therapy. But basically, all of those factors was really what was the determining factor of me saying like, okay, you need to go to therapy now. Like, you need to go talk to somebody. You need to seek help outside of, you know, the people that I was used to just constantly going to, venting to, and asking for help whenever I needed. At that point, I understood that I needed more of professional help. And so I got on Psychology Today, which is the website that I had used prior when I had looked for therapists before. And I went on Psychology Today, and I just, you know, went and started to research on therapists who had the requirements that I had. I guess I should touch on some of the requirements that I did have for a therapist for myself. So first, I wanted a female therapist because I just thought that it would be easier for a female to relate to some of the struggles that I feel I deal with, because she's obviously a female as well, you know what I mean? And then the second requirement that I had was that she was, you know, like a person of color, whether she was Latina, whether she was Black. I just wanted someone who has gone through certain things that I've gone through in my life that nobody else that is not like me or looks like me hasn't experienced. And so those were like my two main requirements. And then obviously another requirement that was like super important was somebody who like would take my insurance, because as much as I love therapy and I'm an advocate for therapy, I definitely needed and wanted someone who my insurance would cover, because baby, therapy's expensive, and you know, the budget wasn't there for me to just be paying somebody for therapy. So I went on Psychology Today and I put in all the requirements, and I ended up finding a therapist on Psychology Today, but it took me to this other website called Headway. And so on Headway, the therapist that I ended up going with, I reached out to her, requested a consultation, and then we did the consultation. It was like a 15-minute conversation, and she just basically asked me like, what's bringing you to want to seek therapy, to want to, you know, start therapy. I just kind of explained to her like what was going on in my life, and you know, why I kind of finally made the decision to just like full on really try and find somebody. And so, you know, we both kind of decided that, you know, each of us were a good fit for one another, and then therapy began. Now stepping into the first thing that I learned in therapy, or that like my therapist was like really trying to get me to understand, and that is stop catastrophizing. Do not catastrophize, stop catastrophizing. That's probably the first thing that I remember my therapist like really trying to hone in on me. And even till now, like about to be what, like 2-3 years into therapy, and she still constantly has to, like not constantly, but she does still remind me, because I do feel like sometimes I kind of revert back to that mentality. But before I go into that a little bit, I wanted to give you guys the definition of catastrophizing. Catastrophizing means a person fixates on the worst possible outcome and treats it as likely, even when it's not. So just to kind of simplify that a little bit more, catastrophizing is basically like when there's something that's going on and you just automatically go to the worst case scenario. Your mind just automatically jumps to like, the worst is gonna happen, and you just start to spiral. And so that was something that my therapist really had to, you know, work with me on, and something I've had to like really work on myself as well, is just kind of shifting the mentality of when something's not going right, something seems super overwhelming, rather than automatically just jumping to, oh, like the worst is gonna happen. Just kind of like sitting with myself and being like, okay, you're catastrophizing right now, identifying that that's what it is that I'm doing, and then trying to kind of get myself to get back to a state where it's just like, okay, you were just catastrophizing, like that's probably not gonna happen. And even if the worst case scenario that you thought up in your head does happen, right? Let's say like just so happened to be that the worst case scenario that you could have possibly thought of happens. There's no point in you driving yourself crazy and, you know, doing mental gymnastics to figure out how you're gonna deal with that issue, because the issue is not here right now. And so you need to deal with what's going on right now, rather than deal with what's, you know, potentially gonna happen. And again, I say this as someone who is still trying to work on it. I still have my days where it just might not be a good day, and like I just automatically just go to the worst case scenario. But I know, and through the work that I've done with my therapist, I know to identify what it is that's happening and around myself and just be like, don't worry about it. Because if that does happen, then you deal with it when it happens, but don't drive yourself crazy and put yourself in this mood because of something that could potentially happen. But yeah, it's just, I don't know why my mind automatically just goes to the worst case scenario. I don't know why I do that. And you know, it's not as easy as just saying like, oh, stop doing it. You actively have to be constantly, you know, putting in the work and having those mental self-talks with yourself where you're just like, no, like, we're not doing this today. My negative thoughts aren't gonna win. I control my mind, and so I'm going to shift whatever it is that's causing me to have these thoughts and have these emotions. I'm gonna shift that, and I'm going to, you know, make myself feel better, or not allow myself to have these negative thoughts. Because at the end of the day, if you are just constantly thinking about the worst case scenario, you might just manifest that for yourself unintentionally, because you're putting so much emphasis and so much energy into that, rather than putting energy into something positive and something that's good and that could potentially be a positive outcome. So I think it's super important to just be aware of like what you're saying, what you're thinking, because your thoughts and your words are so much more powerful than people sometimes seem to like realize. And so yeah, it's just super important to not allow yourself to catastrophize. Think about what it is that you're feeling, identify why you're feeling like that, and then try to overcome it. Okay, so moving on to the second thing that I have learned during my time in therapy, and that is, do not take what is not yours. So y'all are probably thinking like, what does that mean? So what it means in the context of when my therapist tells it to me, basically what that means is like, don't allow other people's energy or mood or things that could possibly be going on in their life affect what's going on in mine. Like, for example, if let's say I'm with one of my friends, or I meet up with one of my friends and I was in a great mood, and then she's in a bad mood because of whatever, and then I just go and I'm like, oh well, she's in a bad mood, so I'm gonna be in a bad mood too. I am definitely super guilty of doing that, where not necessarily so much with like my friends, but definitely with my husband. I've definitely noticed that there are some times where if he's in a bad mood, I kind of just gravitate to being in a bad mood as well. And my therapist has told me like, do not do that. Your emotions are your emotions, and somebody else's emotions are theirs, and it's not your emotions to take. So if you're in a good mood and somebody else is in a bad mood, all you have to do is be like, hey, I sense you're in a bad mood, like, what's going on? And it's up to that person to tell you like what they're in a bad mood about or not. But at the end of the day, whether they tell you or not, don't let that dictate the course of your day and the course of how you feel. And just to kind of explain a little bit about what my therapist has explained as to why I do this, because that is something about me that I've noticed in my time in therapy, is that I like to like understand why I am the way that I am. Like, I really always try to figure out like, okay, you're saying that I do this. Okay, can we get down to what could have possibly happened to make me, you know, have these type of reactions or do these type of things? Because for me personally, I feel like when I have something to identify, like, oh, this is why this happens, it just comes full circle, and I'm just like, okay, I identified the problem, I've identified where the problem comes from, and now because I have all the information, it's so much easier for me to, you know, go on and tackle it head on, because I know where this is coming from, because at least if something gets tough or whatever, I know, again, I can go back to that thought of like, this is why you feel the way that you feel, this is why this is happening, or whatever. So anyways, all that to say, my therapist has kind of explained that when you grow up in an environment where you don't know how the day's gonna go, like you don't know what the emotion of like the person who's like, you know, your caregiver is going to be, you start to kind of anticipate like, oh, what, you know, what's the mood gonna be today, or what's gonna happen today. And so you start to anticipate it, and then you kind of become smaller and smaller because you want to make sure that that person is accommodated and fine, so that you don't have to deal with whatever consequences of that person's mood is. And again, to give more context, I grew up in a single family home, so it was just me, my mom, and my brother. My parents separated before I was even born. I grew up and I've always only known what it's like to have just one parent in the household. And so you can imagine a single mother living in New York, having to raise two kids. Me and my brother are 5 years apart, so not necessarily like in the same school or in the same grade at all. So definitely on two completely different journeys, and me and my brother could not be more different. And yeah, and my mom, it was very difficult for her. She had a lot on her plate, and she tried to do the best that she could for me and my brother, like constantly putting us in after school programs. And so I can understand why it would be so stressful, and why she had so much on her plate, and why like that would kind of, all the frustrations and all the things that she had to deal with. Unfortunately, to a certain extent, my brother and I had to feel the brunt of some of her frustrations. And so that kind of has a lot to do with why I am the way that I am. But yeah, the not taking on other people's emotions, or just not taking what other people feel as my own, is so hard. Because another thing that I kind of suffer with is being like a people pleaser, which is another thing that kind of ties into, you know, having a parent like that. And so I just sometimes feel like I would rather have other people be comfortable and feel fine, even if I am not necessarily feeling the most comfortable or in the best mood or whatever. I sometimes would rather other people feel better rather than myself feel better. I'm gonna throw in another thing that I've learned through therapy that my therapist always tells me, and that's to take up more space. Because like I said, I'm just the type of person who, I don't like to complain. I don't really like to, like, I just don't, to me, I'm like, I don't want to bother people. I don't want to bother people with my emotions or what I'm feeling or whatever. My therapist is just like, no, learn to take more space. If you don't want to do something or you don't like something, say it, despite how anybody else is going to feel about it. Because at the end of the day, you need to make sure that you're good first before anybody else. Because there's people who are not making sure that you're good. So if you're making sure everybody else is good, who's making sure that I'm good? You know what I mean? So make sure that you're good always, and then focus on everybody else. Because at the end of the day, you can't fill up other people's cups if you're not filling up your cup. That's just something for you guys to keep in mind. I'm gonna go ahead and finish off this eyeshadow on this side, because I realize that if I keep talking, I'm just never gonna get through it. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish off the eyes off camera. Okay, so the eyes are pretty much done. I just went ahead and added a wing and some lashes, which I'm like, a wing and some lashes? Like, girl, who do I think I am? Who do I think I am? Because it's one thing to do a wing and then no lashes, but a wing and lashes, like, where we going? Where we going? Go ahead and do some cream contour. So I'm just using this Fenty contour stick, and I'm just gonna go ahead and contour with that. And while I contour, I'm gonna go ahead and get into, I think at this point it's the fourth thing that I've learned, because I think I threw in an extra one. So, and I'm trying to go like in order of things that I've kind of tackled and me and my therapist have spoken about I'm trying to go like in order of, you know, how we've kind of dealt with things. So the next one is don't aim for perfection. So this one's a tough one because it's still something that I'm very much still going through. Yeah, it's still something that I definitely struggle with, and I still haven't kind of learned 100% how to overcome the need for things to constantly be perfect. But something my therapist has tried to get me to understand is perfection is almost like a form of procrastination, because at least for me anyways, what I would do is like, oh, I want something to be perfect, I want something to be perfect, and then I just will avoid it or put it off because I'm like, oh, it's not perfect. Like, I'll start something and then I will stop midway through because I'm like, it's not coming out how I want it, it's not the way that I want it. And so I have found that there have been a number of things in my life that I have wanted to do and have kind of never continued to do it because I'm just like, this is not the way that I want it to be. It's not, you know, it's not perfect. And there is literally no such thing as perfection, because something that may be perfect to you may not be perfect to someone else. And so we shouldn't strive to be perfect, because at the end of the day, there's no one in this world that is perfect. There aren't many things in this world that are perfect. And so, you know, when you're aiming to be perfect, there's a lot of room for there to be disappointment, or for you just to not want to continue to do something because you're just like, oh, but it's not perfect, so I just don't want to put this out, or I don't want to do this anymore. I feel like the want to be perfect has robbed me of joy in a lot of different situations. It's definitely caused a lot of unnecessary like negative emotions, because rather than enjoying the journey of something, it almost became like a task because I was aiming for perfection. So yeah, so that is one of those things that I'm still really actively like trying to work on. And you know, another way that I've kind of noticed how my want for everything to be perfect has kind of manifested itself is through social media. There's a lot of content that I filmed and I just never put out because I'm like, oh, it's not perfect, it's not good, it's not good enough. And so my therapist has also tried to help me understand that it's like, sometimes it's better to just put something out than not put something out, because the only way for you to grow and for you to know and to like master something is to just do it. And rather than just not doing it or not putting something out because you don't think that it's up to par, that's worse than just putting something out and just learning from it. And so that is something that I have been really trying to just work on and talk myself through. And you know, it's honestly like a constant battle where I'm always having with myself, where I'm just like, just put it out, just put it out. It's not how you want it to be, it's not exactly, you know, what you envision, but it's something. It's better than not showing up, because that's another thing about me. I'm like mad because it's not perfect or how I imagined it to be, but then I'm mad at myself because I didn't put anything. So I'm just like, either way, you're gonna be mad at yourself, or you're gonna find a reason to get down on yourself. So it's like, isn't it better to just put out the content, and at least for the next time, you know, oh, let me do this way, or let me change this when I edit this, because it's gonna be more up to par to how it is that I want it to be. So that is definitely something I'm still very much working on. Also, I'm just like looking at this glam and I'm like so mad that I'm just going to edit after this. Like, this beat so far, this side, because this side we're not talking about this side yet, but so far it's giving. So the next thing is, your life isn't always going to look how you imagined it to look, and that's okay. This one this one was a hard one. This one was a hard one for me to, you know, to hear and to honestly, you know, come to terms with, because I feel like we as kids, or like when you're in school, people are always like, oh, what are your goals? Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you see your life like in like 5 years from now? And so I feel like we're always taught to like write down our goals and, you know, have this plan of how you want your life to look like. And so I feel like for me, I fixated on this idea of what I thought my life should look like at this point, based off of my own desires for my own life, based on the things that I've seen people around my age accomplish, or people on social media, or just even like people in my own circle, like some of my cousins. Because at the end of the day, what you do is you see the people around you and you start to look up to them, and you're just like, oh, this person did this, so I want to do this. Like, I remember when I had graduated college, one of my cousin's frat brothers who really helped me step into the life outside of college and being like a graduate and like now trying to be into the workforce. And at the time he was 26 and he was already making 6 figures. And I remember I would always say, like, by the age of 26, I want to be making 6 figures. And let me just tell you, I'm 28 and I'm still not making 6 figures. And that's not to say that I'm never going to make 6 figures or more than 6 figures. But to come to the realization that I was getting closer and closer to that age, and I was literally nowhere near reaching that goal, and that's just one example, was so difficult for me. And it's still super difficult for me, because I feel like in a sense I've disappointed that naive girl who thought, you know, that it was gonna happen. And at the end of the day, it's not that it couldn't have happened, because I'm sure that there's plenty of people who are that age and are making that, or younger and making that. It just didn't happen for me. And the realization that it didn't happen, it was disappointing. Like, that's really what it comes down to. Like, it was just disappointing. And there's a lot of other things that are disappointing to me. I thought that at this age I would have things way more figured out than I do, especially in regards to my career. And that is something that I am very much kind of lost in. I feel like I'm literally rolling with the punches. Like, I wake up and I'm just like, okay, we're just gonna roll with the day. And yeah, it's a frustrating one. And it's really frustrating, because I thought that by this point I would have it all figured out, and I'd be in my career and I would be successful and whatever. And that's not the case. However, it's crazy how life works, because at no point did I ever think that by this age I would be married and I would own a house. Like, that was never, it was never something that I really saw. Like, there's not many people in my family who are like still married, so that was never anything that I like aspired to. And even owning a house, like, I wanted to own something one day, but it was never a goal for me to like own a house or anything. I was like, oh, like, you know, I'm from New York, so I was like, I'll just buy like an apartment here. So it's crazy how the things that I envisioned for myself, I haven't reached that. But yet the things that I never thought that I would have or anything like that, I've reached those. And yet I'm sure that there's people who are wanting to have what it is that I have, and, you know, have strived to, you know, have the house and have the husband and whatever. And I'm sure that they probably have the career and they're probably beating themselves up about it. And yet I have that, but I'm beating myself up for something completely different. And so what I take away from that is to literally just be grateful for what it is that you have, and to, you know, sit there and think about how there's somebody that wants what it is that you have. And another thing that I have to constantly remind myself is that while I may not have the career or, you know, the salary that I expected myself to have by this point, that doesn't take away from all the other things that I've been able to accomplish up until this point in my life. And I think that for me, I just tend to focus on the negative and the things that I haven't been able to do rather than the things that I have been able to do. And I feel like it's so much better to focus on what you have done and what you can do rather than what you can't, because it's kind of like looking at the glass half full rather than looking at it half empty. But yeah, that is like definitely one of those things that it's been a struggle. It's something I struggle with every single day, like 100%. I struggle with it every single day. Just trying to give myself grace and understand that, you know, I had a plan for myself, but at the end of the day, life has a completely different plan for me. And you just need to, you know, accept that everything has a timing and everything will work itself out. And as long as I am putting in the work, then, you know, I'm gonna reach my goals. And I also try to think that doing social media and having a YouTube channel is something that I've wanted to do since I was in college, but I was always so afraid that people were gonna judge me or whatever, and so I just never did it. And I see myself now and I'm like on YouTube and I'm, you know, trying to do social media, and that's one of those things where I'm just like, be grateful, because I could potentially have been in a career where like my career was taking off and never have been able to have the opportunity to do this and do social media and have a YouTube channel. And so maybe this is what I'm meant to do, or I'm just meant to be on this platform, and so I'm on the right path. Okay, I'm about to go in with some blush. I think I'm gonna use this blush. This is the Full Fantasy blush palette from Lunar Beauty and Lauralee Los Angeles. I've been using this like all the time, but I think I'm gonna go in with this blush color because I feel like it matches the best with my eyeshadow, and I kind of want to do like a monochromatic moment. So I'm gonna go in with that and then just bring this in into my cheek and then bring it up, because I feel like there's that like awkward space. So I'm just gonna put that on and then bring it up a little bit to up there. With that, I'm gonna go in with my last thing that I've learned through my journey in therapy, and that is the only way through certain things is through it. So this is one of those that my therapist has recently told me, and you guys are probably like, yeah girl, like I get it, but no, like actually so I have been currently going through some things in my personal life that I'm not gonna get into right now, because I'm literally going through it. Like I'm in the thick of it, and I'm trying to like navigate how to deal with this situation and deal with these things that are going on. And so I am kind of the person that if there's something that makes me uncomfortable, or I just don't really want to do something because I don't know how it's gonna go, or you know what the outcome is gonna be, it causes me like a lot of stress and anxiety, and so I just kind of like avoid it or push it to the side. And my therapist has kind of had to tell me like, the only way you're gonna get through this situation you're going through is literally to just go through it. Go with the motions. Don't put it off, because you putting it off is just gonna delay you having to deal with it at some point. And so that wasn't something I really wanted to hear, because I really just wanted her to tell me how to navigate the situation, and she's just like, the way to navigate it is to deal with it head on. Just go through it, go with the motions, and give yourself grace at the end of the day. Always give yourself grace, but you have to do it, because nobody's gonna do it for you, and you just avoiding doing it is just, that's not the answer. Like, it's just not, it's not the answer, because it's not gonna solve any problems. And yeah, and I know that some of you, it might resonate with some of you, it might not, but yeah, trust me, I didn't want to hear it either. All right, I'm going in with my butter gloss. But yeah, trust me, I didn't want to hear it either. When my therapist told me that, I was like, that's not really the response I wanted. And she was just like, I know, but it's the response that I have for you. And sometimes we get put in these tough situations so that we can literally grow. Like, it's literally for you to grow. And even though it may not make sense right now why something's happening, or you may be thinking like, why me? Why do I have to go through this? I don't want to have to go through this. At the end of the day, certain things happen in our lives because it's literally happening to you so that you can learn from it and so that you can grow. And it may not make sense right now. Okay, my camera just coming off because my phone died. But yeah, like I was saying, sometimes the only way for us to grow or to learn and to like elevate is for us to go through uncomfortable situations and go through things that we just don't want to go through. And you might be questioning, like, why do I have to go through this? I don't want to have to go through this. What did I do to deserve having to deal with this? But at the end of the day, there's just certain things that are just meant for you, and it's just meant for you to see how you're going to deal with it, see how you're going to handle it, and for you to literally just grow. And that's just what it is. And as frustrating and as annoying as it is, because I'm like I said, I'm in the thick of it, I just try to remind myself that once I go through this, it's gonna be one more thing that I can tackle on as something that I've done or I've overcome. At the end of the day, it's only gonna make you stronger. But yeah, so that is it for this video. This is how the glam turned out. I'm actually so pleased and like amazed by how it turned out. So that is the end of this video. I hope you guys like these style of videos. I know it's a little different from like my vlogs and my fashion content, but therapy and like mental health care and all that is something that's super important to me, and something that I advocate 100% for like everyone to do. But yeah, and therapy has definitely like changed my life for the better, and it's something that I continue to see myself doing. I really don't see like a future without me having a therapist or going to therapy. But yeah, I have so many other things that I can talk about in regards to things that I've learned, because I go to therapy all the time, so I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly reading. So if you guys like these style of videos, make sure to comment down below so that I know to continue to film these type of videos for you guys. I want to just end out the video like my therapist always says, just make sure that you're kind to yourself, do something nice for yourself, and yeah. So I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Turn your post notifications on so you get notified every single time I post a new video. And I will catch you guys in my next one. Mwah. Bye.